everybody. I come here for everybody. Kill everybody. I'm the champ. I'm the king.
Why are fighters really scared of Khamzat Chimaev? Khamzat Chimaev is undoubtedly one of the most dominant forces within the current UFC. There are multiple reasons why his dominance has left a deep impression on other fighters, which include: Number 8. He towers over the competition. Let's start with the most obvious factor. At 6 foot and 2 inches, Khamzat Chimaev is a cut above the rest when it comes to physical stature. He also has an impressive reach of around 75 inches, which is good when compared with others in the division. For comparison, Colby Covington has a reach of 72 inches and Gilbert Burns has a reach of around 71 inches. Even if it is a difference of just a few inches, don't underestimate the advantage that even a single inch in reach can bring. Khamzat Chimaev at 6'2" is simply a nightmare for most of the competition. In fact, even his training partner and fellow UFC fighter Alexander Gustafsson seems to acknowledge this fact. Chimaev, despite being a welterweight, likes to spar regularly with light heavyweights and heavyweights in the gym. According to Gustafsson, it isn't just that Chimaev is too big for the division, there's also the fact that he far outclasses his competition in skill. He's just that good. Number 7. He is freakishly talented. After his most recent bout against Gilbert Burns, is there even a reason to question Khamzat and his talent? The man simply has it all, from excellent hand speed to good movement, balance and coordination. Khamzat Chimaev is light on his feet and seems to possess an unwavering spirit. Just the way he charged into most of his fights has left a deep impression on most fighters and fans. Of course, it isn't just talent. Khamzat is known to be a hard worker and has even changed his residence just so he could be closer to his gym. However, we simply can't take away the fact that the 26-year-old Swede is a talent that is currently dominating a whole division in the best division in the world. Number 6. His upbringing. We've noticed a trend that fighters seem to be cultivated in adversity a bit more than other athletes. We have Nate Diaz, who confessed he only went to the gym so one of the guys there could buy him food, or he'd starve. There's also Conor McGregor, who relied on welfare, and Jose Aldo, who left the Brazilian favela and poverty behind due to MMA. Khamzat may just be another fighter to be added to a long list, but there is no doubt that his upbringing has shaped the fighter that he is today. Khamzat was born in 1994 in Chechnya, Russia. At the time, the place was war-struck, and survival was hard. Khamzat describes his childhood as a time without food. Despite all of the hardships though, Khamzat found a way to survive and channeled all of his fear and subsequent aggression into training and combat sports. By the age of 5, Chimaev had already started wrestling, which given his background wasn't exactly a surprise. Khamzat had lived up to the Russian nation's legacy of being the most dominant nation in the wrestling world. Speaking of dominant records, number 5. He's dominated every fight he's had so far. Until this point in his MMA career, Khamzat Chimaev maintained a perfect record. He stands at 12 wins and 0 losses even after facing the number 2 ranked welterweight in the entire world, Gilbert Burns. While it did seem like Khamzat struggled a bit in his fight against Gilbert, he still managed to come out a victor at the end, and it doesn't take anything away from his other dominant performances. The fans knew they were looking at something special the moment he defeated Gerald Meerschaert at UFC Fight Night in September of 2020. It took Khamzat 17 seconds in his third fight at the UFC to KO/TKO the veteran fighter with more than 30 wins under his belt. Over his 12 fights, only 1 has ended with a decision, whereas 6 others have ended via submission and 5 via knockout. Furthermore, out of his 6 fights at the UFC, 4 ended within the first 4 minutes of the first round. It's an impressive record to rack up, and we're surely looking forward to what he brings us next. Number 4. He's a very technical fighter. With how fast Khamzat has finished most of his fights, it's easy to look at him as a fighter that brute forces his opponent's defenses. Of course, who can forget Khamzat picking up his opponent Zhang Li mid-fight while talking to Dana White simultaneously. But that isn't all there is to the fighter known as Khamzat Chimaev, and his recent bout with Gilbert Burns proved that. Khamzat is extremely proficient in wrestling, which stems from his childhood training. He has a variety of different takedowns that make him very challenging to defend against. However, his wrestling isn't the only skill that's won him his impressive records. Khamzat is perhaps the best wrestler turned fighter within the UFC. After his transition to MMA, he has adapted well to other skills and showcased his proficiency in striking multiple times during his bouts. Most fans of the sport like to relate Chimaev to Khabib Nurmagomedov due to the dominant nature of both fighters. While we can't say for sure who beats who in a fair fight, one thing is for certain: Khamzat has proved himself to be a more well-rounded fighter than Nurmagomedov. One can argue about grappling, but over his 12-win streak, Khamzat has repeatedly shown his proficiency in wrestling, but also other disciplines, which make him the most dangerous fighter within the division currently. Number 3. His confidence. For someone who doesn't speak English very well, Khamzat is a very charismatic and marketable character. He has this absolute confidence in himself and seems to let nothing get to him. You have to acknowledge his talent with the mic. The man had fans talking right after his first bout, which is something a very small number of the fighter population at UFC was able to do during their time. Granted, Khamzat Boris Chimaev is no way near to Conor McGregor or Chael Sonnen when it comes to trash talking, but his natural charisma is just enough to get the fans rolling and his opponent in doubt. Another example of this natural charisma is his Instagram handle. Khamzat Chimaev already has around 4.6 million followers, which is around 4 times more than the current welterweight champion Leon Edwards and the featherweight champion Alexander Volkanovski. He's able to get into his opponent's head even before the fight begins, and his previous record does seem a bit daunting to whoever faces him. We've already seen excellent examples of how a fight can be won before it even begins. Case in point, Conor McGregor versus Jose Aldo. And it does seem like Khamzat Chimaev has the talent to rile up his opponent before the fight reaches the octagon. Number 2. He's unpredictable. Chimaev is always on a roll. You never know what the man's up to, as he's unpredictable, just like his fighting style. He seems just about ready to fight anywhere and everywhere. Khamzat debuted in the UFC on the 16th of July. After securing a win over his opponent, he was back just 10 days later to fight his second opponent. If that wasn't good, he was right back to fight just 8 weeks after his second fight. All of those fights were won in a dominant fashion, just the way Chimaev likes it. And like it or not, fans love to see explosive fighters with even more explosive personalities that can throw hands just about anywhere. Number 1. He walks the talk. You have to be a very special fighter to receive praise such as the baddest dude ever from the president of the UFC, Dana White. Sure, Khamzat can talk a big game, but he certainly delivers when it comes time to walk the talk. This is a characteristic Khamzat has shown ever since he began his career in combat sports. When he was a kid, Khamzat won a bronze medal at the Junior Russian National Championship. After he immigrated to Sweden at the age of 18, Khamzat went on to win 3 Swedish national championships, the last of which was won without conceding a single point throughout the tournament. The history of the UFC is filled with a lot of fallen stars who shone brightly for a short period of time, but eventually fell to skilled and more seasoned opponents. At the very least, at this point in time, Khamzat's career doesn't seem to be taking a similar direction. He's liked by the president of the company, and the fans can't seem to get enough of him. But most importantly, Khamzat seems to be improving every time he steps into the octagon, and we can't wait to see where his career will lead him. That's all for this video. What do you think about Khamzat Chimaev? Do you think fighters are justified in being apprehensive of his impressive record? Or do you think Khamzat will be outclassed by the current welterweight greats? Let us know in the comments down below, and as always, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.